I think this is good to get started. And if more people come in, we'll admit them. Okay, so thank you all so much for spending your Saturday with us. My name is Marissa, and I'm your Zoom co-host for today. This way, Christine, who you see on the other camera, can focus on cooking and answering your questions. So I just wanted to say that I'm so thrilled that you all showed up this morning because this is the first ever Sahadi's cooking class. And since this is the first one, I hope you guys will give us any grace for any technical difficulties. We are hoping that this is the first of many cook-alongs. So I think you should have gotten a notification when you logged on that we are recording. So we're going to be taping the entire class, and you'll receive the recording after if you are cooking along with us in real time, or if you want to revisit it later. Please feel free to turn on your camera if you like. I'm in my kitchen. I'd love to see your kitchen too. We are asking that you stay on mute for the entire class. That way everyone can hear Christine super clearly. However, we definitely want to hear from you in the chat. So go ahead and look for the chat button in the bottom of your Zoom screen. Go ahead and open it up. Let's test it out. Please tell me in the chat where you are cooking from today. And we can make sure that this works. I'll start. Does everyone find the chat? There we go. Bellevue, Washington, Essex, Vermont. Love that. New York City. Okay, we're coast to coast, Christine. Westport, Connecticut. Very cool. All right, so we figured out where the chat is for the most part. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Christine because that's who you came to hear from today. She's going to tell you a little bit about herself, about Sahadi's, about writing her cookbook, Flavors of the Sun, and then she's going to get right into cooking our first recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself. If you need anything, chat me in the chat. Over to you, Christine.
Hey, hi, thank you, Marissa. I'm really looking forward to this. So my name is Christine Sahadi Whelan, and I am one of the proprietors of Sahadi's, an ethnic specialty food market and importer. So my family's been in this business over 100 years, and in the last 25 years, prepared foods have become more of, more highly requested in the shops. We wrote the cookbook to highlight some really terrific Mediterranean flavors and some lesser known ingredients and to show people how to use them. I had a fabulous time writing the book, and I hope you enjoy the recipe as much as I do. Most of it is things that I do in my home. This is my home kitchen. So, it's got the same standard appliances that anybody else's kitchen has. So there's no bells and whistles. It's just a straight out kitchen. So it means that generally speaking, every one of these recipes works as well in somebody else's home as it does in mine. So this is the cookbook. The cookbook is based on flavors. We broke it up by flavors as opposed to breaking it up by breakfast, appetizers, lunch, dinner. We broke it up by bright and nutty and spiced and savory flavors. So each category talks about a specific flavor profile. What we're hoping is that once you learn the flavor profile, you will find it very easy to use the ingredients in other recipes or in other things besides the one recipe you purchased it for. It's the one single most complained thing about in the retail environment is I bought this jar of pomegranate molasses. I used it once and it's been in my closet for 5 years. So the idea of the mini recipes in the book is to give people other things to do with those ingredients. Once you learn the flavor profile and where it belongs, you can use it in a number of other recipes, which is important for people. I mean, we want people to use things and enjoy them. And a lot of what we do in the store as education is talking about the ingredients. So I'm going to jump right in. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm going to jump right in. So we picked recipes today that are easy and fun. And this is a great recipe to make for Mother's Day. It's simple and it tastes great. But so let me just jump right in. I am going to use, so we have puff pastry. Yours may be larger or smaller. The way it comes in Sahadi's is in these 5x5 sheets. So if yours are not in sheets, you're gonna wanna cut them into squares approximately that size. You can use any type of mini hot dog, sausage, whatever it is. You can even use large ones. I just use a standard separate hot dog. We have our egg wash and we have our Dukkah. So the key ingredient here is going to be the Dukkah. The Dukkah is a blend of like 20 different spices and herbs and nuts that we hand blend at the shop. So we roast our almonds and our pistachios, which are the base for Dukkah. It's nutty. And then we add sesame seeds, fennel seeds, black pepper, za'atar seasoning, which is a variety of thyme or wild oregano. Sea salt, of course. What else is in here? Poppy seeds, and then a number of spices. So Dukkah is a very, I'm going to start rolling along as I talk about the Dukkah because I'd like to get these in the oven. So Dukkah is different depending on what country you're from. So Egyptian is going to be slightly different than Lebanese. It's going to be slightly different than Syrian. But for the most part, in most cases, it is a seasoning blend that's customized. You can mix it with some olive oil so that you can just use it as a dip, or you can use it as I'm using this one, which is into the on the hot dog. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut into triangles. It's really easy to use. We're going to go start on the fat side, and we're going to roll towards the pointy side, making sure that
Christine, we have our first question from Barbara. What do you think of substituting asparagus spears instead of sausage? That's a great seasonal question.
I love that. We do a lot of vegetarian and vegan dishes at the store, and I love that idea. And they would be just as beautiful. You would just have to decide on the size and make sure you press the seams down really well so that they don't pop open. But you can also do things. We can do things with cheese. There's lots of different things. Dukkah is very savory and nutty and warm, so it lends itself to a number of uses in that way. If you've got the slight crunch, if you can, I don't know how well you guys can see it, but if you've got the slight crunch from the nuts, we are very big on the texture of Dukkah, so it's not, we don't blend it fine. We blend it very coarse so that you can still get some interesting textural effects from the nut being there, and that would definitely lend itself to any vegetarian preparation. Because the Dukkah itself is very highly seasoned. So it's a really nice ingredient to work with because it doesn't require, once you have it, it doesn't require you to put a lot of other items in the dish.
So something I've always wondered, Christine, is when I'm thawing puff pastry, I always get paranoid that I'm going to roll it when it's still frozen and or too soft. How do you determine the right texture when the puff pastry is ready to go?
Well, I always take the pastry out the night before because I want it to be, it's harder to work with, which is the reason why I only took it out 2 seconds before we started this class. It's harder to work with if it's not chilled. So I like it to be chilled, but obviously clearly not frozen. So I take it out the night before and I make sure it's fully thawed. And then I don't remove it from the fridge until we are 100% ready to start. Because as you can see, if you take it out early, even in the 5 minutes I've been working it, it's already getting a little bit more sticky. So the easiest way to do it is to keep it chilled. If I were new to this, I would leave part of it in the fridge and do half at a time.
Great tip, thank you.
With phyllo, you have to, if you're not quick, then it's better to keep part of it in and just work with what's out. The thing here is you have to remember, as you're rolling it, you have to make sure that the seam connects. So if it's not, if the hot dog is a little big, like this one is a little big, I'm going to press it so that the dough is fully wrapping around so that that seam there. Even then, a few of these will pop. There's nothing you can do to prevent that. A few of them will not seal in the oven because the nature of puff pastry is it puffs. So sometimes that will happen, but you just want to make sure that you get the seam proper, because the more seams go proper, the easier it is. I line the pan, by the way, I didn't mention this, with parchment paper because well, number one, it makes cleanup a heck of a lot easier. And also because it minimizes the mess. You don't need to add any additional fat when you use this. You just have to make sure you leave enough space to get as many on them as you can. This normally would just about, a 1 pound puff pastry would normally coat just about a 1 pound of sausage or hot dog. So you have to figure that, you know, with the exception, you might have a few extra pieces, but for the most part, this will make an entire tray ball. So I'm just going to roll these last few, and then we're going to pop them in the oven. The oven is already preset to 425. It's definitely better to keep it hot for puff pastry because you want it to puff fairly quickly. So after I roll these right up, we're going to glaze them with an egg wash. That's going to help hold the Dukkah spice onto the pastry, and it's also going to help with the shininess. So it'll add something to the, definitely will add something to the visual at the end. So here we go. We're just going to wrap these last few. The nice thing about using a spice like Dukkah is we make it pretty much every few weeks. So it's always fresh and like a very savory. It's the if you take the rest of it and whatever you have remaining and you put it into, you dilute it with olive oil, it just spread itself is so delicious. It really, it has so much flavor on its own that it doesn't require anything else, which is really nice when you're, one of the reasons I do like to use spice mixes in my dishes is because it adds an element of flavor with without a lot of extra work. When you have to do all the spices individually, it's a lot of work. I mean, you can make Dukkah at home, but even I don't, which is I make almost everything at home, but I don't make Dukkah at home because it is a lot of work. It's by the time you get all the spices, it takes half a day to get everything, toast everything, grind it to the correct texture. So it is, generally speaking, on an item like that, it is better to get it where somebody else made it for you. Here's the last few sheets.
Christine, can you talk a little bit about your recipe developing past?
Yeah, sure. So I have been developing recipes for Sahadis for a real long time. I took a 2-year break from my finance education to go to this IC is a culinary school in Manhattan, or it was in Manhattan, where I did extensive culinary studies on catering, on Mediterranean foods, on large scale. It basically taught me how to cost out recipes and how to, and basic recipe development. The structure of a recipe. I have been developing recipes since we didn't even have a kitchen, and we just used the recipes on our boxes of couscous and other items. Those recipes were developed in-house. I worked on each one of them extensively before we published it on the outside of our box. But I learned a lot, and culinary school is really great for teaching you how to see different techniques and how to cost out things. My love for food is just something that's just always been. So I definitely didn't develop that later in life. I developed my love of food really young. I have always enjoyed cooking and entertaining. I like nothing more than having people over and throwing, a big grill party or doing a big matzah board. It's very much a part of the Middle Eastern culture and very much a part of who I am. All right, so we're going to do these last few, and then I'm going to glaze. And while they're baking, we're going to talk about the ingredients for the second recipe and answer some questions. A few more. Yeah, so this package just about made it. We're going to be 2 mini hot dogs over. Yeah, I think so, and that's it. All right. So now when you glaze, you need a brush or some kind of method. You can even use something simple as a paintbrush, it doesn't matter. But I have a little silicone brush that I'm going to use right now. And then we're going to sprinkle as much Dukkah as we can get to stick on. All right. So last one's here.
You're so efficient at that. I would definitely need to put at least half the package in the fridge.
Okay, so now we're going to wash with the egg wash. I was lucky enough to get a farmer's market egg, which is why my egg wash is so yellow. Most people's egg wash would not be this dark because it wouldn't be a farm egg, but I was lucky enough to happen upon some this week. So I'm going to do these half at a time because if you do it well at once, the egg wash will dry too quick. Let's do this. See, so you want to definitely you can see the different textures. And I like to try to get as much as I can in the sides.
If someone is really into measuring, how much would you say roughly you're putting on each dog? Like a 1/4 teaspoon?
Half a teaspoon, because a lot of it falls off. So not all of it. I mean, as you can see, the tray definitely has a lot of pieces kind of lying down. So you're definitely going to lose some of them that are just not going to stick. You could be more careful and pick it up and dunk the hot dog right into the bowl if I had put the Dukkah on a flat plate, but I'm okay with wasting a little bit for ease and convenience and time savings. So that's why I'm doing it like this, but there definitely are better ways to do it where you would have more. There we go. And I would say you don't even need a whole egg, really. I mean, you can see that there's like at least half an egg still left here, but that's just what we needed. All right, now I'll sprinkle the rest of these and then we will talk about some other things while they're in the oven. These can take 20 minutes to bake. They're at 425. I'm going to put them 10 minutes on the bottom and then I'm going to put them 10 minutes on the top. So that way we make sure that the puff pastry gets cooked all the way through, because I do not like pastry that is not fully cooked is very upsetting on the stomach. So I make a real effort to make sure that it is fully cooked top and bottom. That's why we switch it. Most ovens will have a hot spot too, so it does help to keep an even color. All right, so we are good to go now. Let me put these in my oven. We'll do the bottom first, and then we're going to go to the top. Set the timer for 10 minutes. All right, so that was the first recipe. You see we have 3 hot dogs left over, which was not bad considering. And so we'll go on to the next recipe in a minute.
And now that the dogs are in the oven, we're going to do our signed book giveaway. Yeah. So if you guys read the fine print, you would have seen that we're actually going to give away a copy of Flavors of the Sun today that Christine is going to sign for and dedicate for your mom or maybe whoever else is special in your life. So I've already randomly selected a person in the Zoom room. So you had to be present to win today. So if you're watching this later, I'm sorry, guys, but you'll have to be present next time. So drum roll, please. And the winner is Janet. Janet, you are the winner. Congratulations on their first ever live Zoom giveaway. So if you could please message me in the chat, Janet, you can do a private message rather than to everyone. Send me your mailing address and any special dedication that you'd like Christine to write, and I will make sure that we get that mailed out to you next week. So that was super fun. Congratulations, Janet, and thank you for participating, everybody else on the call. So also, while I'm on here chatting, I would love to ask you guys who are in the room what other recipes you'd like to see Christine make in real time. So if there are any ideas that you have or favorite recipes from the book, or even favorite recipes of, you know, items that you've bought or seen in the store, please go ahead and put that in the chat, and I'll record that for next time, for consideration for next time. So, okay, now back to Christine, and she's going to teach us how to make the roasted red pepper dip that goes with the Dukkah dogs that just went in.
Okay, so we're going to make Mohammara. Mohammara is a Syrian recipe from Aleppo. It's a very old recipe. It's something I grew up eating. My grandmother made it all the time when we ate at her house all the time. Middle Easterners tend to spend lots of family time, family meals, enjoying each other, lots of time around the table. So this recipe is very dear to my heart because I lost my grandmother a long time ago, and I associate this with her very distinctly. So let me talk to you a little bit about the way we make it versus the way it was made. The way my grandmother would make it is she had a grinder, an old-fashioned, like a meat grinder that was clamped onto her table, and she would dry the fresh pepper. She would use fresh red peppers, not roasted. She would dry the fresh peppers, and she would turn them over and over on paper towels for 2 days before, and then she would hand grind them in that machine, and then she would add the other ingredients. One of the nicest things about Mohammara is its texture. So that is a very easy way to control texture. I'm going to use a food processor, which makes it a little bit more difficult to control texture. So I'm going to be really cautious about pulsing the food processor to make sure that everything doesn't get ground into a fine paste, because it's a balance between texture and and flavor blending, and I want to make sure that we have texture as well as a really delicious dip. So let's talk a little bit about the ingredients. I am using roasted red peppers. You can roast peppers on your own. I quite honestly brought a jar and took them out because it's very quick, and most roasted red peppers in jars are a decent quality. So the important thing about the peppers is they have to be drained really, really well. Like I put them in a strainer, and then at 2 hours ago, I drained them out twice more. If you use too much liquid from the peppers, you're going to get your flavor is not going to be as pure because you're not going to be able to add all of the other liquid ingredients like the pomegranate molasses or the lemon or the olive oil, because it'll be too watery, and you don't want the dish to be too watery. So I drained the peppers really, really well. I dried them on paper towels after that, and I put them in the bowl. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the other ingredients. I've got my Lebanese extra virgin olive oil. I love Lebanese oil. It's thick and a little bit, I want to say maybe peppery, but it has a great mouthfeel to it. It really is a very well-rounded feeling oil. It's not a thin oil. I don't love thin oils because once again, they break up the texture of a recipe, and I am very big on texture. I really appreciate when I put something in my mouth. There's some crunch, there's some smooth. So I want to make sure that we achieve that. So a heavier oil is better. But once again, you can really use any kind of extra virgin olive oil. Fresh lemon juice, which I squeezed this morning. I prefer fresh lemon juice. It adds a bit of a zing that you don't get from a bottle. So if you can squeeze the lemon, it's definitely worth it. I have an organic sea salt. I have an organic sugar. Of course, these are our walnuts that I brought from the shop. We source our nuts worldwide. We roast a lot of our own. We are very, very quality focused. So the better ingredients you put in, especially dishes that are not too complicated, the better dish you're going to get. So yeah, you should buy a good oil. You should buy fresh walnuts, and your spices should be fresh. For the most part, as much, you need to buy from a place that turns so that your spices are always top quality. I've got my breadcrumbs. I've got my Aleppo pepper, arguably one of my favorite ingredients to use in anything. I use it in almost everything. It adds a little bit of hints of smokiness, a little spiciness. Once again, it has nice texture because it's not a fine ground, it's a coarse ground. So you're definitely getting some more texture in there. And it's not too hot, although it adds beautiful color. So plus I use it to garnish a lot of dishes that I make on a regular basis. Then we have our pomegranate molasses. So I like to use a all natural pomegranate molasses. You can see the jar there. It's definitely my preference to use an all natural because otherwise they're adding too much sugar to sweeten it up. I would much rather have that fruity floral back end than a sweeter back end. I can always add an extra teaspoon of sugar to the recipe, but what I really want is that intense pomegranate flavor. And there's really no substitute for pomegranate molasses. I mean, when it's in a recipe, there's almost nothing else I know that will give you that singularly unique flavor. I don't know a lot of other cultures that use it. In the Middle East, it's used very widely. I don't know a lot of other cultures that do use it, but we do use it in other things. We use it in bar cocktails. We use it in cakes. We use it in salad dressing. So it is tart. Of course, pomegranates are tart, but it is fruit. It is very fruity and somewhat intense in it's got a very powerful flavor. So it's a really great ingredient. You can only use just a little bit and it adds a ton of flavor. So on that note, let's start it up. Let's see what we have here. Okay. So I have a standard Cuisinart, any standard food processor would work. We're just going to add the ingredients in, and then we're going to be really careful about pulsing for texture. It doesn't really matter that much what order you add the ingredients. You just want to make sure not to grind too much.
It looks like your breadcrumbs are really fine, Christine. Is that right?
This particular batch was, yes, this particular batch was fine. Normally I would make my own, but I had breadcrumbs, so I use them. So I would definitely go with something a little coarser because once again, it all speaks to texture. So I personally like a slightly coarser one, but I didn't realize what was in the package when I took it.
We have a question from Carol about what brand of extra virgin olive oil you use. And I know you have a lot of opinions about that. And also Kathy is asking, she only has panko. Will that work? I feel like that is similar to the texture you have right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Panko will definitely work. Any breadcrumb will work. You just have to use a dry one, not a fresh one. If your breadcrumbs are fresh, you need to put them in the oven to dry them out a little bit because you want the breadcrumb to absorb some of the excess water from the peppers. So that way, so it really doesn't matter what type of breadcrumb you use. And at the end, you'll see when we grind it up, we will look at it, and then if it needs a little more of something, it's more for texture than anything else. You've already added all of the flavors that are going to be in there. So if your peppers are a little bit wetter, you might need a little bit more breadcrumbs. I try not to use a ton of breadcrumbs, which is why I do like a coarser one when I have them, because I want the color of a roasted red pepper is not as bright as or intense as the color of a fresh pepper. So when we make it at home with fresh peppers, the color is more intense. So the more breadcrumb you add, the more you dilute the color. But that's not going to really change the flavor of the dish.
Understood. Now back to the extra virgin olive oil. Tell us all about olive oil, Christine.
I clearly I have a lot of choices in olive oil. We sell a ton of different oils, and I do vary my use from time to time. Saipan, the little jar you see up front, which is what I have here, is what we use in the store as our house oil. So that's what the store uses every day. I personally like that oil a lot. I know the farmer. He was actually just here recently. We've been buying from Saipan for, we bought from his dad. So maybe 30, 40, we've been buying from them forever. And their oil is always in excellent quality. We are the sole importer in the United States. So all of the Saipan that comes in comes through us. But he is just really, he's a great guy. He is very transparent about the crop and how it is each year from year to year. Like this year, the crop is very bad. Excuse me, one second. First, we're going to switch this over.
Oh, Ellie's talking about what she does with pomegranate molasses. She drizzles it over her morning oatmeal after adding walnuts. That sounds so good, Ellie.
That sounds delicious. Yeah, so we this year the crop is really bad. So you'll notice olive oil's going at least doubling, if not tripling this year, because the crop is just terrible. He likes to use, he grows his own olives, but he can't grow enough olives to produce all of the oil that he sells. So he buys additional olives, but from Lebanon. Whereas other countries, some places, some people are not as transparent. I mean, over the years, there's been plenty of articles about how olive oil is not, it's not really olive oil in the container, or they bought olives from a totally different country, but it says products of Italy. Different countries get different premiums. Italy and France get a premium for the olives. They get a premium for their oil. They're known for their oil. Lebanon, most of Lebanese oil is used in country. So it's not as expensive as the other oils, but the quality is just as good. So that's one of the reasons why we like it. But one of the best things about working with somebody that we know for this long is he's going to be very upfront. He's going to say, look, the olive crop just happened, and now for the next 12 months, this is where we're at. So it gives me an opportunity to make choices that I need to make on my end to make sure that I have the sufficient stock for my customers and that the quality is the same as it always is. Some of the other people that I don't know as well, they're not going to call and tell me what their farm looks like. So it makes a really big difference to us to work with somebody that we know and respect for that reason. I'm just going to put the timer back on, and then we're going to show that I just put them from the bottom of the oven to the top. And of course, like I mentioned, a few of them popped open because I didn't push the steam hard enough, but you'll see that when we do that. I'm going to work in the food processor right now, so that for 1 minute, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to add the oil at the end because I really want to see the texture before I add too much liquid. But I'm sure it's going to be. No, it would be, but it's not. So it's definitely needs a little bit more, but I can see that pulsing is definitely the way to go. This is a fairly powerful processor, so. Now I'm going to drizzle in the oil.
So what are you looking for exactly, Christine?
Texture. It's just about the right texture now. So I'm just going to drizzle in the oil and I'm going to flip it out and we'll talk about it. So now the oil is going to pull it all together. Let's look. Yes. Okay. So now I'm going to take it out and then we're going to look at it and we'll talk about what I was looking for and why I was so slow at using the machine to not pulverize. Because if you don't care about the texture, then it really wouldn't make as much of a difference to you. I personally like my Mohammara to have texture, so I am a little bit more cautious. Some people just puree it and they're happy with that, and it tastes great either way. It's just that I prefer to see pieces in my dips. Right, so now I'm just gonna stir it up because it is not completely evenly stirred. It never is in the food processor. Down where the blade is, always needs a little bit of extra. Okay. This over, and here we can look at the next one. Okay, so as you can see here, there's lots of texture. There's pieces of walnuts, there's pieces of red pepper. You don't see the breadcrumbs, which is exactly what's supposed to happen. It just kind of blends right in and it's absorbs. As it sits, it will definitely get firmer. So I like to serve it right when I make it. So you're pretty much eating it within an hour. I wouldn't put it in the refrigerator. I would just put it right out and serve it. If you keep it, it's going to still be just as delicious, but it's definitely going to firm up. The breadcrumbs is going to absorb more of the liquid, and the roasted red peppers also are going to let out some more liquid because it's the nature of a roasted pepper. So that would make a little bit of a difference there. But if you can, as you can see, as I'm putting it in the dish, it is very texturally appealing.
Lisa in the chat is saying that she loved the background product supplier stories. So if you have any others you want to share, Christine, they'd like to know.
Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna, so I'm gonna garnish with mint because I'm Lebanese and we use mint in everything. Pretty much in everything. I always have mint growing. Plus we like the color. Fresh herbs are a huge part of our culture. So we generally will garnish everything with mint or, mint or parsley or lemon or cilantro just because we like the visual. I'm gonna put a little lemon on the side of the dish. And we are good to go. And then we can talk about some other ingredients, absolutely. Right. So one of the I think most interesting things about being in this business for so long is that I worked for 30 years with my dad, and now both of my grown children work with us. And so many of our suppliers are long-term friends. I mean, it's suppliers that became friends. I mean, when you work with somebody for generations, it's very, very different. I mean, I know that I'm going to get the top of the crop when I order something from abroad because my uncle always bought the top of the crop, or my dad always bought it, and the family knows this is what we take, that we take the first, the top of the pecan crop because we want a giant pecan. We buy hazelnuts from somebody that in Oregon that we have been buying from for years. I just met him, but we've been buying from him for almost my entire life. I buy chickpeas from a guy that in a Mexican supplier where I get the largest chickpeas. The larger the chickpea, the less skin to meat ratio. I mean, the more meat there is to skin, which means that the hummus is smoother. And I personally do not have time or patience to peel my chickpeas. I know lots of people do, but I don't. So if we buy for our customers and our guests, if we buy the largest chickpea, we know that they're going to get the best hummus because it's going to be smoother and it's going to be a lot less work for the guest or the, whoever's creating the dish. So we try to do that in a lot of areas. A lot of our suppliers are long-term suppliers, and we host them at least once every few years when they come to New York because everybody comes to New York. And it's great. They come in, we meet with them, we get a chance to talk about different things. We talk about the state of the market, and we get to know them a little bit personally. And when you know somebody personally, they're going to do the best they can for you. And I think that that's part of what makes Sahadi's different, is that we do have those personal relationships. I mean, we do go abroad at least once or twice a year to different shows, whether it's Dubai or Germany or Paris. And our suppliers from all over the Middle East also go to these shows. So we have a chance to see them abroad. Occasionally we do go to Lebanon. So we do have a chance to see them abroad, but more importantly, when they come here, we host them in our cafe. And it's really a nice opportunity to see a supplier at a different level than you are at a show where they're taking you to dinner and they're the supplier, so, and you hear where they're going, what are their plans for down the road? Where do they see the market? It's just interesting. And I think it makes us unique in that area. So it also makes sourcing for us a little bit easier because, like I said, people, they sell to people that they sell the best to the people they know the best and the people they trust the best. So it's a win-win situation for us.
I don't know if everyone on this call is aware, but maybe you should share a little bit about Sahadi Spirits and that whole sourcing journey.
Yeah, sure. That's been a really fun experience for us. So a few years ago, during the beginning of all the pandemic, we had a wine pour license for our bar, but of course the bar wasn't open. So we had the opportunity to sell bottles of wine. So we ended up buying from and meeting some amazing suppliers and selling their wine. We were selling a ton of it in the stores. And then of course, and that came to an end when, you know, when they went off those restrictions, we were unable to sell wine again. So we decided that we were going to cut a little piece of our Industry City store out, and we were going to source all these great wines from the Levant. So we must have now, I mean, our manager there, Carolyn, has, she must have 50 wines from all areas of the Middle East. We have wines from Palestine. We have wines from all over Lebanon and Morocco, and all of these places that are definitely lesser known wine regions, which Lebanon and same with Morocco also, most of the countries that were settled by the French have a very rich wine culture, much more so than is expected, for lack of a better word. So we've had so many fun experiences. We have bubblies from Lebanon. We have orange wines from Lebanon. I didn't even know they made orange wine in Lebanon. So and not only have I learned a ton about wine, but I've learned a lot more about the actual wineries, in the wineries themselves, and sustainable practices, and female forward winemakers, you know, where some of the practices are just amazing to see. Most stuff is farmed in Lebanon is farmed organically, but not labeled organic, because they don't have that need to have that over there. Their farms are still small. They don't have these big, you know, these big catalog farms. The farms are still small. So same thing with the wineries. The wineries are old. Most of them are still family owned. It might not be the original family, but they are still family owned. 10 years ago when we went, we had the lovely experience to be able to go to Kasara, and it's a winery right outside of Zachli, where I think it's in Zachli proper, but where my family's from. And we took a tour and did a whole tasting, and it was absolutely lovely. Well, this is 10 years ago, full circle. We're hosting the export manager of Kasara at lunch on Monday, because he's coming to visit, and now that's become a big line for us in our spirit store, as well as we feature it at the pier. This month we're featuring it at the pier. So because of that, he's coming, and we're gonna have a lovely lunch together with him and May, who was there on the ground, US PR person. So we've learned a lot about wine and interesting spirits, more about arak, and we have small batch araks now, things that weren't even a factor, that were never in this country before. And we're really enjoying it. It's been a great learning experience. Kate is the GM of that store, and she has really had a great time working with Carolyn. Carolyn's a terrific buyer. So it's been a really great relationship, and it's been fun. It's interesting to learn different things about wine that's been outside of my environment. I'm going to just check on these tacos real quick, because I think they're almost finished.
Thank you for sharing that, Lisa. Elisa in the chat has said she's been trying different wines from Sahadi Spirits and loves how different and light they are. So different from like the heavy, typical, like sort of California reds. Yeah, they are really easy drinking. I agree, Lisa. But like not easy and boring, but easy as in just like you don't feel bad afterwards.
Yeah, a lot of the spirits there, traditionally they only used, I mean, let's face it, they were French settled, so they used a lot of French grapes. What's happening now in the market is that more and more of the indigenous grapes are being used, which is super interesting, because they're grapes that the winemakers traditionally would steer away from those grapes, because they just didn't feel anything outside of the traditional winemaking. The box was not something that was as popular. Now, indigenous wines, along with, once again, the oranges and stuff, are becoming way more popular. Kasara just brought a great wine that was a blend of 2 indigenous grapes that had no other grapes in it. And it was a lovely wine. We tried it at the pier during a wine tasting with May, and it was really lovely. So, and they just brought me a red that's meant to be chilled. So there's a lot going on in the winemaking world that is fun and exciting. And they do have a lot of very approachable wines. Almost their rosés are very approachable. A lot of them are made in the style of Provence, but their rosés are very approachable. I mean, as you can imagine, I drink a lot of Lebanese wine, and I also taste a lot of unique wines. And you know, there's very, very, very few wines, with the exception of extremely organic or earthy wines, that are not easy drinkable. I'm finding out of all the ones too, but Turkey, we have all these different wines from Turkey, same thing, very approachable wines, but you don't see them on anybody's menu, and you don't see them even in a lot of restaurants. If you go into a Turkish restaurant, inevitably they would steer you to a French wine. It happens every time. I mean, I go out a lot for Mediterranean, they always do. It's almost like they never believe that their wines were ready for but they are ready for the mass market. They're wonderful and delicious and bright and so pairable with the dishes that they're meant to go with. So I think that's another thing here. All right, so let's look at the Dukkah dogs. Like I said, a bunch of them popped because it's what happens. Let's see if I can get these pops to try. Here we go. So now we're just gonna plop these down. These are very hot when they first come out, so you need to be careful. Anything in pastry like this tends to be way hotter than it looks. So you just want to make sure that you don't burn yourself when you're serving. Actually, say no, can't do it with my hands too hot.
Oh, I see you, Barbara. Spicy beef kebabs for future class. I'm going to write that down. Kathy says she had a Musar Jean at a restaurant in Burlington, Vermont. Maybe that's something from the region, Kathy. Is that what you mean? Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Actually, Christine, what would you pair with this? I know we didn't prepare that, but I'm curious.
What would I pair with this? What do I have that I could pair with this? I don't think I have anything special. This is kind of like a light and fun thing. So I might do something just like, but I mean, to me, Mother's Day is a rosé holiday. So, I mean, while I might not be always the first choice with the meat, I feel like to me, Mother's Day, almost anything I serve on Mother's Day, I almost always serve rosé because it's like an Easter wine. I don't know why. But any kind of red would go. I mean, anything that goes, any kind of, but I definitely would serve even, I'm not a warm wine person. I would serve a slightly chilled red if I was going to serve a red, because I just feel like that's the kind of food that the wine that goes good with.
Yeah, Kathy says the Musar Jean is from Lebanon.
Yes, I think we sell it. I don't know if we sell the whole line, but we definitely sell Musar. I just don't know which one of the ones that she had. We started off with like 3 or 4 Lebanese wine producers, and now it seems like everybody's making interesting, fun wines now. I'm actually hoping to go this summer. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to, but I'm hoping to go this summer on a wine tour and hit a bunch of the wineries that I have not been to. We've met so many of the producers at our shop in New York, but I would love to see them in their space. And ideally, we would try to go, I think that we're talking about maybe trying to go in August or September at the beginning of the crop. So this way they would be actually picking the grapes and doing the process. I would love to see the harvest, but we'll see how it goes. You never know. All right, so this is our final dish. There is our Dukkah dogs. There is our Mohammara, and you can just dip and go. So
that was amazing. Thank you. Any last questions in the chat, guys? Just a lot of yums, Christine. So I think.
Well, hopefully, hope you guys enjoyed this class. I will definitely try to figure out something fun for the next time. Maybe we'll go with that recommendation. And thank you all for cooking with me. If you happen to be in the shop, give me a yell if I'm there. I'd love to meet you. And thanks so much for joining us. Have a great Mother's Day.